How you doing, everybody? Welcome back to Stand Focused for Jesus. Today we're going to take a deeper look into the Middle East and the term Middle East, and just get a better understanding of it, understanding where it came from, understanding the purpose of it, and just having a deeper understanding of the Word of God and different things that we have been falsely taught. And one of those things is the term Middle East. Now, when you bring up the topic about Jesus being a man of color, one of the first things people are going to say is, oh, yeah, I know that he wasn't white, but he wasn't black either. He was Middle Eastern. So if they're going to say that, then we must have an understanding of the term Middle Eastern and where does it come from. The very first thing that should come to your mind is this: Middle Eastern, even with the term Middle Eastern generically, has nothing to do with ethnicity, nothing to do with race, nothing to do with tribe, absolutely nothing. So it's impossible for Jesus to be a Middle Eastern in reference to ethnicity, because Middle Eastern is not a ethnicity. Middle Eastern does not mean black or white, just like American does not mean black or white. You have black and white Americans. You have Chinese Americans. You have Japanese Americans. You have what is called African Americans, white Americans, Australian Americans. It's not an ethnicity to define somebody. So we're just going to go through these different articles, and we're going to bring it all together and see what the Spirit is showing us. So this is an article I found on ChristianityToday.com, and it was written March 18, 2016. Now, it started off good. The only problem is, which I hate this, you end up reading some of it and then you can't read all of it because you got to log in and you got to pay for it. Making money off the gospel when they know they can offer this for free. But let's read what they do have, and then we'll continue forward. After one of my recent lectures, a Christian college student approached me and asked if black people are uncomfortable with the fact that Jesus is white. I responded, Jesus is not white. The Jesus of history likely looked more like me, a black woman, than you, a white woman. I wasn't shocked by this student's assumption that Jesus was of European descent, or the certitude with which she stated it. When I am in U.S. Christian spaces, I encounter this assumption so often that I come to believe it is the default assumption about Jesus' appearance. Indeed, white Jesus is everywhere. A 30-foot tall white Savior stands at the center of Biola University's campus. White Jesus is featured on most Christmas cards, and the recent History Channel miniseries, The Bible, dramatically introduced a white Jesus to more than 100 million viewers. In most of the Western world, Jesus is white. Christ should not be depicted with any images. So those who depict Jesus as white, that is not correct. And those that depict Jesus as a man of color with images, that is not correct. Especially graven images, you end up worshiping skin color instead of who he was because of his spirit. The reason that Jesus came as a what we call a black man is because it was a fulfillment of Bible prophecy. And I've said this and taught this many times. That's why it matters. It matters 100% in regards to Bible prophecy, because we can trace where Europeans or Caucasians or what we call white people, where they came from, where they migrated from. We can trace all this. You can trace anybody, Africans, African Americans, people all around the world. You can trace where they came from and what tribe and what group they came out of. And Jesus came out of the tribe of Judah. We know these things. So if he came from the Gentile lineage of Japheth, then that is not a fulfillment of Bible prophecy. Because Japheth's lineage is ultimately the lineage that gave way to what we call white people, or white skin, which has everything to do with DNA, because technically there is no such thing as a white person. Just like technically there is no such thing as a black person. Nobody is literally black. And we have some very, very dark people, but it has everything to do with what they call melanin, which on a deeper level, on a cellular level, it gets down into carbon-6 and stuff like that. So it continues on right here, and it says, while Christ the Lord transcends skin color and racial divisions, white Jesus has real consequences. In all likelihood, if you close your eyes and picture Jesus, you'll imagine a white man without conscious intention or awareness. Many of us have become disciples of a white Jesus. Not only is white Jesus inaccurate, he also can inhibit our ability to honor the image of God in people who aren't white. Jesus of Nazareth likely had a darker complexion than we imagine, not unlike the olive skin common among Middle Easterners today. Princeton Bible scholar James Charlesworth goes so far as to say Jesus was most likely dark brown and suntan. So it goes on and talks about the earliest pictures of him were having brown complexion, and then I can't read anymore because you got to pay for the article. So what a lot of people have to realize is majority of the people of color, they grew up on a white Christ, and they had no problem accepting that because it really wasn't about him being white. It was about the sacrifice that he had made. But now that truth has come, people have a hard time accepting that Jesus is a man of color. And they will say, oh, you're causing division, it doesn't matter. Well, when somebody brings up the topic about Jesus being a man of color, and it becomes so divisive, where was this divisiveness when people were and still are portraying Christ as white? Because if you're going to make the argument that it's divisive, then a white Jesus is also divisive, because no image should be used to be representing Christ in regards to perpetrating a specific skin color. And you have images of white Christ everywhere, so we know that that is purposely done. Why not just have his name, scriptures, and stuff like that? Images are powerful. That's why they use images. Imagery is powerful. Very, very powerful. Look how powerful the TV has become. The black box, the scrying glass, the looking mirror. Look how powerful that has become, where it is in every household. Look at the influence that it has to make people go out and do things. Look how it has helped to spread sin with the portraying of certain images. Look how certain people have been painted in the media, which is what? The media, you watch the news on a box that portrays a image. And so you look at certain people in a certain way because of how they are depicted in images. That's what's going on. So we can't say that it doesn't matter. And we can't sit here and speak against, oh, you're causing division. Well, guess what? You're absolutely right. I am causing division. I'm doing exactly what the Bible has called me to do, because Jesus himself said that he came not to bring peace on this earth, but he came to bring a sword. The sword is truth. I'm speaking nothing but truth. This is why I showed it on my screen, so you can look it up and you can see it for yourself. Yes, I am causing division. I am causing righteous division. I am fulfilling Bible prophecy through the Spirit that dwells in me. Again, Jesus said that he came not to bring peace, but a sword. He came to cause division. He came to see who was really going to stand for him, who truly loves him, whether he was white or black. You don't think this is all by design? Like, come on. You got to use some type of common sense. This is all by design. The very people that are talked about all around the world and murder and all these different things that we see going on. The people around the world where they have a certain image in their mind because of what others have told them, and because they have had a few bad experiences with black people, is the very people that Christ came from. Why is that important? Because the Bible tells us to love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, all your mind, and all your strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. So even if you do have the correct depiction of Jesus Christ, if you are not loving your neighbor, you have not fulfilled the commandments, which means that you don't really love God in the first place. That's what it boils down to. All this is a test. It is a test. And I mentioned that before. So let's go to this next article. Now, the first article we read, it was obviously written by a black person, a black woman. Now, this article, if I'm not mistaken, is written by a white woman. So I'm not being biased. I'm sharing it from both sides, from both perspectives. Y'all know how I do. I also give objective points to the points that I make because I want you to look at it that way. I want you to examine everything. Don't just take my word for it, but you know, insert things that go against what I'm saying to see if what I'm saying is true. So it says Jesus wasn't white. He was a brown skin, that's black. And you're going to see that Middle Eastern Jew. And we're going to address that term right there, Middle Eastern Jew. Here's why that matters. When they say brown skin, that means black. They just don't want to use, she didn't want to use the term black. But when you're talking about somebody being black, you're talking about them being brown because nobody is literally black. Black is a generic term. I want y'all to understand these things. So it says, I grew up in a Christian home where a photo of Jesus hung on my bedroom wall. I still have it. It is, don't know how to pronounce that word, but I'm going to try. It is schmaltzy, and rather tacky in that 1970 kind of way. But as a little girl, I loved it. In this picture, Jesus looks kind of gentle. He gazes down at me lovingly. He is also light-haired, blue-eyed, and very white. The problem is Jesus was not white. Now, let me stop right there. She is a Bromby Senior Lecturer in Biblical Studies, Trinity College, University of Divinity, which all that doesn't mean anything, but I just want you to see that she has some type of background in the study of the Bible and the study of history. Now, she clearly said that Jesus is not white, but she says what? I still have this picture of a white Jesus. So even though she knows the truth, her flesh still wants to hold on to the fact of a white Messiah. Let's go back up. Jesus wasn't white. He was a brown-skinned Middle Eastern Jew. Here's why that matters. This is her article. I grew up in a Christian home where a photo of Jesus hung on my bedroom wall. I still have it. The power of words, when we actually read, and we read in between the lines, we can really see what she's saying. We can really see what she's going through. We can really see her struggles. This is something that she's struggling with, because she still has some type of feeling and sentimental attachment to this picture. And it's not about the picture. It's about her being able to relate her being able to relate to the white skin that she has. So does it matter? It absolutely matters. If she can admit this from a Christian perspective, then how much more are other people dealing with this and they don't even realize it? They're being racist and don't even realize it. When you refuse to accept what the scriptures and historical evidence is teaching, that Jesus is a man of color, yet you claim to be a Christian, you fall into the same category as the white supremacist. You fall into the same category as a racist. She says again, but as a little girl, I loved it. But as a grown woman, she still has this picture because it has sentimental value to her. There's a connection still there that she doesn't want to let go, and it's a fleshly connection. I'm not mad at her. I'm just stating the point. I understand what she's saying. I understand what she's going through. Of course, we connect with people that we look like. Of course. But when you take it to another level of racism and all these different things that are going on and think you have the right to treat people the way that you want to treat them because you're superior to them, then that's where the issue comes in at. And that's what the white Jesus represents. I'm not against white people. I'm against a white Jesus because it's not true. And what it represents because of the people who purposely set it up, playing both sides. They playing the white people too. If you're white, European or whatnot watching this video, they're playing and you have fell into that category. Maybe you're watching the video and you are in that category. They've played you too. They don't care about you. As long as they can get division so they can get their order out of chaos, so they can get their false messiah and get the war that they want. The problem is Jesus was not white. You'd be forgiven for thinking otherwise if you've ever entered a Western church or visited an art gallery. So even in art galleries all over the world, we know these things. Why? You have to ask why. Don't be afraid to ask why. Don't be afraid to question. Question what I'm saying. But while there is no physical description of him in the Bible, that's not true. That's another argument that people make. There's no physical description. It's simply not true. And if there was no physical description, then where do we come up with the white Jesus? Where do we come up with Middle Eastern? That's something that's made up. If there is no physical description of Jesus in the Bible, then that's even worse. But there is a physical description of Jesus in the Bible, and we can know where he came from and what color he is, and why it does matter in light of the Bible, not in light of Kelson King, not in light of this woman, not in light of the other article we read or any other thing that we're going to read, in light of the gospel, in light of prophecy. Excuse me. There's also no doubt that the historical Jesus, the man who was executed by the Roman state in the 1st century CE, was a brown-skinned Middle Eastern Jew. This is not controversial from a scholarly point of view. So those who are actually studying, they know these things. They just don't speak it because they don't want to mess up their position of power and authority. That's a test for them too. But somehow it is a forgotten detail for many of the millions of Christians who will gather to celebrate Easter this week. This is an old article. She's speaking someone's truth. To a million Christians that claim they're Christians that are supposed to be doing their research that the scholars are giving them to confirm if it's true or not, that shows you that, hey, there's some issues going on with these millions of Christians. If you're watching my videos and you're not challenged to go look up and confirm the things that I'm saying, then you shouldn't be watching my videos. Because I'm going to tell you to go look up the things that I'm saying and compare it with the scriptures. Because I know what I'm saying is truth and I have nothing to be afraid of. Challenge me all you want to. I'm going to stand because I'm standing in the spirit of truth. I'm standing in the spirit of love. And I'm not speaking this from a perspective of the Hebrew Israelite groups you see out there preaching hate about Esau being the white man. If Esau was the white man, Esau and his Jacob were brothers. Esau came out first. So what you talking about? In the Old Testament, it even says that you're not supposed to abhor or hate an Edomite. That's what the scriptures say. But hey, what do I know? I'm just a Bible-believing, Bible-reading Christian. On Good Friday, Christians attend churches to worship Jesus and, in particular, remember his death on a cross. In most of these churches, Jesus will be depicted as a white man, a guy that looks like Anglo-Australians, a guy easy for other Anglo-Australians to identify with. That's what it's all about. I can't identify with black folks, so I'm identify with white folks. I can't identify with a black Messiah because I hate black people. I can't identify with the white Messiah because I hate white people. This is a test. All this is a test. It doesn't matter if Jesus was white. It would still be the same. It has everything to do with the hatred in people's hearts. Think for a moment of the rather dashing Jim Caviezel, who played Jesus in Mel Gibson's Passion of the Christ. He is an Irish-American actor. Or call to mind some of the most famous artworks of Jesus' crucifixion, Rubens, Grunewald, Giotto, and again we see the European bias in depicting a white-skinned Jesus. Now this is not me saying it, this is her saying that. European bias, that's what it boils down to. Because they feel like they cannot relate. When regardless if you're black or white, you should be able to relate to any person. Because we all go through the same things. But for some reason we can't relate. Does any of this matter? Yes, it really does. As a society, we are well aware of the power of representation and the importance of diverse role models. The power of representation. After winning the 2013 Oscar for Best Supporting Actress for her role in 12 Years a Slave, Kenyan actress Lupita Nyong'o, probably pronouncing that wrong, shot to fame. In interviews since then, Nyong'o has repeatedly articulated her feelings of inferiority as a young woman, because all the images of beauty she saw around her were of light-skinned women. This is purposely done. You got to start reading books. We got to start reading, increasing your knowledge. They got books on there about advertising and the power of advertising and why was advertising brought about, and you know all the different things that they were trying to push with advertising. This is what this is more so talking about. That's why I like reading, because you gain knowledge and then you're able to apply it to the scriptures and have a deeper understanding of what's actually going on. It was only when she saw the fashion world embrace Sudanese model Alec Week that she realized black could be beautiful too. So she was black, and she didn't even see beauty in herself in regards to how God created her, because of what was being done around her. About all the images of beauty she saw around her were of lighter skinned women, which also includes white women, and downplaying that black was not beautiful. It's purposely done. It has everything to do with the Bible. If we can recognize the importance of ethnicity and physical diverse role models in our media, why can't we do the same for faith? Why do we continue to allow images of a whitened Jesus to dominate? It's a powerful article. Many churches and cultures do depict Jesus as a brown or black man, because brown and black man, it's the same. I want y'all to understand that. Brown and black man is the same. Some people say, oh, black is not the same as brown, two different colors. In reference to describing a black man is a brown man. Orthodox Christians usually have a very different iconography to that of European art. If you enter a church in Africa, you'll likely see an African Jesus on display, which they shouldn't have that either. But these are rarely the images we see in Australian Protestant and Catholic churches, and it is our loss. It allows the mainstream Christian community to separate their devotion to Jesus from compassionate regard from those who look different. I would even go so far as to say it creates a cognitive disconnect, where one can feel deep affection for Jesus but little empathy for a Middle Eastern person. Like what's going on in the Middle East right now. America has absolutely no empathy for what's going on over in what's called the so-called Middle East. With the war and the children getting killed and all these different things. America overall has no empathy for that. But they can relate to what America says that is ran by what? White people. That's what you call this right here. Cognitive disconnect. Where's the empathy for the so-called Middle Eastern people? The ones that ain't trying to get into this war and everything. We're going to look at that and see how this war really popped off. It's not what you've been taught. Where's the empathy? Where's the empathy, my white brothers and sisters? Where's the empathy for the whites that are dealing with racism too? I'm not, getting into all that reverse racism and stuff like that. I'm just speaking the truth. Where's the empathy for those whites that are just trying to live their life? They're out there. Y'all are out there. Hopefully you're listening to this video and watching this video right now. You're just trying to live your life. Live a life in Christ. Where's the empathy, my black brothers and sisters, for those white brothers and sisters who are not trying to get involved in racism and stuff? And they know the truth and they're speaking it. Maybe they're not comfortable speaking it, but they're not out here promoting violence against blacks or any other people. Where's the empathy? It likewise has implications for the excuse me, make sure I pronounce this right. I might pronounce it wrong. It likewise has implications for the theological claim that humans are made in God's image. If God is always imaged as white, then the default human becomes white, and such thinking undergirds racism. Historically, the whitewashing of Jesus contributed to Christians being some of the worst perpetrators of anti-Semitism, and it continues to manifest in the othering of non-Anglo-Saxon Australians. Now, I don't believe in all that anti-Semitism stuff. The real anti-Semitism is against who we call the so-called black man, so-called black people. That's the real anti-Semitism, because this term was made up by the very Zionist dude Theodore Herzl, who pushed it, and that's in his own writings. So let's push forward. They talked about, well, she talked about the Anglo-Saxon Australians. She talked about the Australian, but I want you to see something. Indigenous Australians. So we want to go, let's read a little bit of this. Indigenous Australians are the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people of Australia, descended from groups that existed in Australia and surrounding islands before British colonization. So they were there before the British. They were there before what British are, what the whites, white people. Brits come from, white people come from this lineage also. We know this. The time of arrival of the first indigenous Australians is a matter of debate among researchers. The earliest conclusively human remains found in Australia are those of Mungo Man LM3 and Mungo Lady, which have been dated to around 50,000 years. Now, the reason I want to read that is because of those numbers. If their dating is right, and these remains go back 50,000 years, that would be before, or what is known as the pre-Adamic race. 50,000 years. That would be before the race of Adam that gave birth to us, both black and white. So that would mean that these indigenous Australians have been around for a very, very, very long time, before Adam, if these numbers are right. Now, do I trust these numbers? Absolutely not. But I do know what the Bible teaches about the mankind that was here before Adam. We talked about that a little bit in depth in some of my other videos. But if this is true, that these remains, which it could very well be true, that these remains are dated to be around 50,000 years old, then they have a bigger problem. I'm going to show you why. Let's continue forward. It says genetic research has inferred a date of habitation as early as 80,000 years. Other estimates have ranged up to 100,000 years and 125,000 years. Let me say, well, the earth ain't that old. The Bible doesn't say how old the earth is specifically. The 6,000 years has nothing to do with the age of the earth. We know the earth is older than 6,000 years because of the mankind that was here before that. That's why I said the earth was without form and void. When you go look up those words, form and void, you see that was in chaos. It was destroyed. That's why it was dark, because it was complete destruction on the earth. God had destroyed it with the flood prior to what we call the Noah's flood. There was a flood before that. I also believe that a lot of the planets, they were flooded, the other planets. So they're saying that some of these bones go back almost maybe 125,000 years. Now, why is that important? If we go down right here, it says massacres and war by British settlers also contributed to depopulation. The characterization of this violence as genocide is controversial and disputed. That's what it was. It was genocide. The British came in and they slaughtered them. I mean, it is what it is. That's history. But I want you to go right here with me. The terms black and black fella. The term black has been used to refer to indigenous Australians since European settlement, while originally related to skin color. Black originally related to their skin color, but they were brown people. A brown man is a black man. So when they're saying black, they're talking about brown people. And I have to explain this because I know somebody's going to say, oh, it's not the same as black. Black people are not brown. Like, it's a generic term. Like I said, the term black has been used to refer. It is an identifying marker. The term is used today to indicate Aboriginal heritage or culture in general and refers to any people of such heritage regardless of their level of skin pigmentation. In the 1970s, many Aboriginal activists such as Gary Foley proudly embraced the term black, and writer Kevin Gilbert's groundbreaking book from the time was entitled Living Black. The book included interviews with several members of the Aboriginal community, including Robert Jabanuga. Nunga. Sound familiar? That sound like Nunga? Nunga. Jaba Nunga. What does Nunga sound like? Nunga. Nigger. Nigga. Does that sound familiar? Come on now. I wonder why. This is a black dude. Because when you trace the word nigger back, you see it ultimately means black. But it says reflecting on contemporary Aboriginal culture, a less formal term used by indigenous Australians themselves and not normally derogatory, is black fellas, as distinguished from white fellas. You know what the term white fellas refers to? Now you got, they came up with black fellas. And it wasn't, to them, it wasn't derogatory. So now you have an understanding of what the term black means. It means, it relates to skin color, but nobody's literally black. It's talking about brown, copper colored people. I think that was it. I wanted to hit on this. I wanted to show some images also. Let's go ahead and look at them. These are some Aboriginal Australians. They're black, what you would call black people. Dark-skinned people. He looked like my homeboy Corey. Let's go back to that picture. I want y'all to see something. Now you see, they're all dark-skinned, but they got different hair texture. His is curly, but it's thick. And you see he has more curls. But guess what? These are all still black people. Different types of hair, different hair textures, but you know, people of color. Make sure that was it on this. Yeah, I think that was it. Yeah, let's push forward. So also when you go look up Aboriginal Australians, you're going to see that they were people of color. So that's not something hard to prove. Now we're going to deal with the term Middle East. If we go down to the terminology, the term Middle East may have originated in the 1850s in the British India Office. However, it became more widely known when American naval strategist Alfred Thayer Mahan used the term in 1902 to designate the area between Arabia and India. During this time, the British and Russian empires were vying for influence in Central Asia. So this term, as you're going to see, this term has everything to do, the Middle East term has everything to do with politics. Absolutely nothing to do with ethnicity or skin color. Nothing. Nothing at all. A rivalry which would become known as the Great Game. Mahan realized not only the strategic importance of the region, but also of its center, the Persian Gulf. This is all having everything to do with military, vying for power. He labeled the area surrounding the Persian Gulf as the Middle East and said that after Egypt's Suez Canal, it was the most important passage for Britain to control. Why? In order to keep the Russians from advancing toward British India. This has everything to do with war, politics. Nothing to do with skin color. Mahan first used the term in his article, The Persian Gulf and International Relations, published in September 1902 in the National Review, a British journal. So let's read a little bit about this dude, Alfred Thayer Mahan. Alpha Thea Mahan was a United States naval officer and historian, whom John Keegan called the most important American strategist of the 19th century. His book, The Influence of Sea Power Upon History, won immediate recognition, especially in Europe, and with its successor, The Influence of Sea Power Upon the French Revolution and Empire, made him world famous and perhaps the most influential American author of the 19th century. So he is the basis of this term, Middle East, and it goes back a little bit further than that also, as we saw. But he's the one that really started using it, and people caught on to it because of his position of power and authority. But he was with the British, which is important. Now they also mentioned the Suez Canal. The Suez Canal is in what? Is an artificial, man-made sea level waterway in Egypt, connecting the Mediterranean Sea to the Red Sea through the Isthmus of Suez. Constructed by the Suez Canal Company between 1859 and 1869, it was officially opened on the 17th of November, 1869. The canal offers watercraft a shorter journey between the North Atlantic and Northern Indian Oceans via the Mediterranean and Red Seas by avoiding the South Atlantic and Southern Indian Oceans, reducing the journey by approximately 4,300 miles. So this is a man-made waterway, a man-made structure to pass through right up in here. Now we're going to look at a better picture of it. There you go. The Suez Canal is right here. So they can come from the Mediterranean, come down here, come to this port, boom, 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 come down here. Or they can come up through here and go through here instead of going all the way down and coming up here. Now what I want you to see is you have Africa, you have Egypt, you have the Suez Canal, and then you have what? Israel right here. The Suez Canal disconnects Israel from Egypt. So they use this to say that, oh, it's not a part of Egypt, it's a part of Asia. That's simply not true. It's a part of Egypt, and we're going to see it in the scriptures. So if we go here to the Oxford Dictionary, when we look up the term Middle East, it says an extensive area of southwestern Asia and northern Africa, stretching from the Mediterranean to Pakistan and including the Arabian Peninsula. Now, they're saying this, but they're telling you, they're saying it's a part of southwestern Asia. And they're also telling you it's a part of northern Africa. So which one do we go with? We go with the scriptures. The scriptures are going to tell us that it is a part of Africa. It is originally a part of Africa more than it is a part of southwestern Asia, because I can make the argument that, you know, all the continents were one. But in the context of what we're talking about, we're going to see that it is a part of Africa today. So this is another thing I found by Peter McCormick. 10 facts about Egypt and the Middle East that you might not know. Now we're just going to read number 1. Location, location, location. Although considered a Middle Eastern country, Egypt is largely situated geographically in North Africa. The portion of Egypt known as the Sinai Peninsula borders Israel and the Gaza Strip. So he's making this connection for you. Location, location, location. Now this is a article that was in the New York Times. how the Middle East was invented. Until this century, nobody talked about the Middle East because neither the term nor the states in the region existed. Both were the works of the victors in World War I. Who won World War I? The true begetters of the furies that still rage. Curiously, there are few connected accounts of a very confusing history. A readable exception is A Peace to End All Peace, written by a New York attorney, David Fromkin, and available as an Avon paperback. His narrative is clear, timely, and cautionary. The term Middle East was coined in 1901 by Admiral Alfred Thayer Mahan, the celebrated American advocate of naval power. It was popularized in speeches in 1916 by Sir Mark Sykes. We're going to read about him. All this is going to tie together. A British member of Parliament. As a part-time diplomat, he also negotiated the secret Sykes-Picot Agreement, which defined spheres of influence in a soon-to-be partitioned Ottoman Empire. See, all this stuff they making up today, it wasn't like that. The people over there knew what was going on. They knew what was up with the land. They came and made this stuff up for political reasons. It had nothing to do with Bible prophecy for them. This is another article from the Washington Post. And it says how the Middle East was invented. Hopefully it would my computer will go. Okay, here we go. Much has been made of how European imperial shaped the Middle East after World War I. Who? European imperial powers. A transformation often said to have begun 100 years ago this week when France and Britain signed the Sykes-Picot Agreement. So this agreement must be very, very important. We got to see what's going on with this agreement. But fewer people realize that in addition to creating the map of the modern Middle East, they created this map. It's not biblical. Something that they made up to fit their agenda. Post-war European imperialists actually created the concept. The region we recognize as the Middle East today, a roughly defined but distinct swath of territory stretching from Turkey to Egypt to Iran, only came into being with the end of the Ottoman Empire and the disappearance of the older, now antiquated sounding Near East. So they used to call it the Near East, the Far East, and they started using this term for political reasons. Let's go here. The term Middle East. The Middle East was a British military zone during the Second World War set up to defend the Suez Canal and the flow of oil through the Persian Gulf. You see, this had nothing to do with Bible prophecy. You can't sit here and say that, oh, Jesus was Middle Eastern or Middle Eastern people. Yes, that term is used today, but you got to have an understanding. You got to look at it in light of the scriptures. Just like if you're going to use the term black or white, you need to have an understanding of the term black and white and what they actually mean. So the Middle East was, you can say it was a military operation. And that's exactly what's going on right now. They're trying to occupy the land with military. Because we're at war. It was the region east of Europe and in the middle between Europe and India. It was a part of it's a part of Africa. By 1943, it was more common than Near East, the older term for the region. So it went from Near East to Middle East. Despite its Eurocentrism, even people in the Middle East now use the term Middle East. So there's nothing wrong with using the term, it's just having a proper understanding of the term. Says Middle East has no fixed meaning. And those are different sources they gave on that. And it says, like Nigeria and Iraq, the Middle East was defined by British interests. There's nothing profoundly historical or cultural about it. Now, nothing profoundly historical or cultural about it. Now, it's just showing different maps how dark green, most speak Arabic, light green, Arabic speaking minority. All up in here. What language did Jesus speak? Exactly. The older meaning. Early in the 1900s, Middle East meant between the Near East and the Far East. The countries from Iran to Burma, particularly the Persian Gulf ones. Back then, Iran was not seen as part of the Near East, while the Balkans were. The Near East pretty much matched the old Ottoman Empire. In the 1920s and 1930s, with that empire gone, the Near East and the Middle East started seeming like the same thing. Today, there is no difference in meaning. And it gives you a geopolitical mindset of the West. They said that the West was saying this is Far East, and that was Near East, and then Middle East. Let's push forward. And this is from a book, and I'm gonna have to scrap some money together to get this book because it looks like it costs $60. But I may be able to find it cheaper. But it's called London and the Invention of the Middle East: Money, Power, and War, from 1902 1922 by Roger Alderson. This is an old book, and they were talking about it way back then. That's why I said you got to read. At the beginning of the 20th century, London was the largest and richest, as well as the most influential and powerful city in the world. Its population of 4.5 million was followed by New York's 3.4 million and Paris's 2.5 million. Each of the following 7 largest cities, Berlin, Chicago, Vienna, Canton, Tokyo, Philadelphia, and St. Petersburg, had populations less than a third the size of London in 1900. London was the center of the capitalist market system of international finance and overseas trade. All the world kept time by London's observatory at Greenwich. Britain's capital dominated the communication networks of the early 20th century. Its extensive telegraphic wire services, numerous journalists, varied periodicals, and large publishing houses extended the power and influence of the city throughout the English-speaking world and beyond, while entrepreneurial opportunities and cosmopolitan values prevailed even over the narrow religious and partisan attitudes of the British Isles. At that time, London was the capital of the British Empire, which ruled a quarter of the globe and its peoples. Queen Victoria was related to most of the royal houses of Europe and reigned over millions more Asians and Africans than Christians and English-speaking peoples. But some people say that that Christianity is a tool to control blacks. But it says here that Queen Victoria was ruling over more Asians and Africans than she was Christians. For all my black folks out here who say that. Britain had far greater sea power than France, Germany, Russia, or the United States. Any ambassador to the court of St. James held his country's most prominent posting abroad. London was indeed the world's greatest metropolis. From early in the new century, some individuals and institutions in London began to fear that Britain was losing its imperial ascendancy in the area between Europe and India. So what's this all really about? In 1902, the term Middle East was constructed to describe the area north and west of India and to distinguish it from the Near East and the Far East. So they came up with this term so they can describe where they were losing their imperial ascendancy. Like, we're not talking about this part, that part. We're talking about right here in the middle. So we're terming Middle East. It had everything to do with them losing power. Nothing to do with ethnicity or skin color. London's general indifference towards the inhabitants of the Middle East at the beginning of the 20th century probably had as much effect upon the region as any aspect of British policy. A few groups in London maintained humanitarian concerns for religious and ethnic minorities in the Middle East. But these were completely eclipsed by the priorities of policy. So if this was their land, because the Brits gave way to the Balfour Declaration, we're going to tie all this together, then why were they not concerned with the significance of the land, but more so concerned with them losing power over in that area? A few groups in London maintained humanitarian concern for religious and ethnic minorities in the Middle East, but these were completely eclipsed by the priorities of policy, the priorities of their government. Those in London who conducted, and influenced British strategy in the Middle East were far more interested in political considerations than in the Middle East itself. They didn't care about this piece of land. Shouldn't they have cared about it if they really knew what it was for, what it represents, what went down, the significance of it? Especially a so-called Christian nation, Britain, Great Britain. Although it was here that Britain had cemented its influence since the Middle East of the 19th century. Scroll down a little bit. The first priority of London's policymakers was to defend the empire in India, a priority they saw as justifying British protection of the Suez Canal and domination of the Persian Gulf. The second major concern was to maintain the balance of power in Europe, and the third to exploit the area's copious resources of oil discovered near the Persian Gulf to meet the needs of the British Navy. This had nothing to do with Middle Eastern being a term talking about people, being a term talking about ethnicity, being a term talking about skin color. It had everything to do with being a term that has to deal with money, power, and war. Resources equal money. Money in this world, power. Power gives you the right, you believe, to start war so you can get more money and more power. So, again, nothing to do with what you've been taught. And they have not mentioned anything about the Bible or nothing like that. These folks were not studying the Bible. They were studying putting some more money and stuff in their pocket and expanding their empire. And then when it came to it, then when they saw it was beneficial for political reasons, then they wanted to get on board. But a certain family was already in the background working. Now, of course, this is all a fulfillment of Bible prophecy also. Don't get it twisted. But we got to read the whole story. You just can't read chapter 1 and then go to chapter 20. You gotta see what's going on. Read a chapter here, read a chapter there, you know, in regards to history. Understanding history in the light of the gospel, in the light of the word, in the light of love. In the 1850s, British troops had been sent to the Crimea to fight alongside the French and Turks against Russia, while in the 1860s, the city of London advanced huge loans to Constantinople to help defray the cost of that war. In the 1870s, and they got this money from a certain family that we're going to address later. In the 1870s, the British government bought 49% of the shares of the Suez Canal Company, and they didn't really buy it. It was somebody else who bought it. They gave them the money to do it. The French-built canal was vital to the British, and they were its primary users. A permanent British presence at Suez was reinforced in the 1880s by the British occupation of Egypt, and in the 1890s by the Anglo-Egyptian occupation of Sudan. These initiatives in Northeast Africa, complemented Britain's economic, naval, and diplomatic predominance over the Turkish Empire and Persia. Given diminished confidence in the regime of the Sultan of Turkey and the Shah of Persia, both deeply in debt and offering low returns, everything to do with money. Oh yeah. And offering low returns to their bondholders. So they tricked the Turkish Empire and everything. They tricked the Ottoman Empire. It's all about money. It's all business. Increased attention was paid to the Arab lands on either side of the Suez Canal. Oh, you can't give my money? Then I'm gonna need the land from you, bro. You need to come off of that. In addition to occupying Aden, Egypt, and Sudan, the British indirectly ruled the Arabs along the coast of the Persian Gulf, the Arabian Peninsula, and the Red Sea. Let me read that one more time. In addition to occupying Aden, Egypt, and Sudan, the British indirectly ruled the Arabs along the coast of the Persian Gulf, the Arabian Peninsula, and the Red Sea, ensuring that Arab leaders maintained a pro-British stance was of course far less costly than occupying the area with British troops. It's all about politics. They said, oh, we don't want to lose any more troops. So what if we can still have our influence, our ideology over there without actually being there? What if we can indirectly have control, yet still be in control? What if we can have these people to be our puppets? So they ruled over the Arabs in that area by influencing them with money, power, prestige all these different things, because Britain at this time was a real superpower. So it was easy to influence some of these people. They, in essence, sell their own people out too for the dollar, for the money, for the shekel. So these Arab leaders, they maintained a pro-British stance. So they would have pro-British policy. When Britain wanted to do something, then they would agree to it. Same thing goes on today with America. The indirect approach also acknowledged the fact that the British in India did not want to upset the Muslims. They didn't want to go to war with the Muslims because the Muslims, they don't play. Look at the wars throughout the years with the Muslims and stuff like that. They didn't want to do this because it would have cost them more. They didn't want their men over here, right? Their troops. Then why in the world would they want to go to war with the Muslims? They didn't want to. It would have cost them too much at that time. It's all a game to them. Sitting there going to wars and talking about standing up for the flag and don't even know what's really going on. Sending people over there to die for the sake of exactly this right here: money, power, and war. Going to war for money and power for a nation that don't even care nothing about you. Before the discovery of oil in the region, the Middle East was plainly not perceived to be particularly significant. Let me read that one more time, just in case you didn't get it. Before the discovery of oil in the region, the Middle East to them was plainly not perceived to be particularly significant. Nothing to do with what people have been telling you. It was about politics. It was about government. It was about building their great empire. Nothing to do with, we want to help fulfill Bible prophecy. We want to get this land because this is God's land. And God promises land to his people. Nothing to do with that at all. Now let me remind you when this book is from. Following Japan's, and if you didn't see it because you listened to it, 1902 to 1922. So it's old enough. Following Japan's defeat of Russia in 1905, the old geopolitical boogie of Russian armies rolling over the Indian subcontinent gave way to new fears of German railways bringing troops to challenge British ascendancy. It's telling you what it's about. It's telling you what it's about. But somebody would still watch this video and say, oh no, it had nothing to do with that. Middle Eastern, Jesus was Middle Eastern, he was not black. He was not a man of color. Middle Eastern does not mean that, man. The British, they helped to bring the people into the land. To counter German influence, Britain instigated a defense diplomacy with France and Russia. So they thought they were about to go to war. They said, oh, we got to counter this. It traded recognition of France's predominance in Morocco in return for French acknowledgement of British dominance in Egypt. Meanwhile, Persia was divided into a British southern sphere, a Russian northern sphere, with a neutral area in between. Maybe saying, what's it talking about? A neutral area? Well, I don't understand all this. Just bear with me and you will understand it and your spirit will be blown. The light is going to shine so bright if it ain't already shining even brighter. So let me scroll down here. Seeing Britain becoming more closely allied to Russia and Persia, the Young Turks, who overthrew the regime of the Ottoman Sultan in 1908, rebelled against the traditional Turkish alliance with Britain. It has everything to do with war. The Turks rebelled against them, even though they had an agreement with them, and we're going to see some other stuff. And the Turks had overthrew the regime of the Ottoman Sultan in 1908. Why? Suspecting the Young Turks were puppets of the German Kaiser, the Foreign Office backed Italian, Greek, Bulgarian, Serbian, and Macedonian initiatives against Turkey. While Berlin actively sought the support of the Turks and the Bulgarians, London policymakers alienated both. When war broke out in Europe in the summer of 1914, British relations with the Turks deteriorated and the conflict was extended to the Near and Middle East. During the war, the campaigns in Gallipoli, Sinai, the Arabian Peninsula, Palestine, Syria, Iraq, and Persia were largely British operations, with more than 1 million British and Indian troops in the area between 1915 and 1919. Many undertakings were made to the Arab, Armenian, Egyptian, Greek, Kurdish, Persians, and Zionist nationalities, which after the war were found to be difficult and sometimes impossible to honor. Post-war Allied diplomacy alienated both of the nationalists of the Near and Middle East, although Britain did succeed in establishing collaborative regimes in Egypt, Palestine, Transjordan, and Iraq. At the same time, Britain managed to preserve its pre-war hegemony over Suez, Sudan, the coast of the Arabian Peninsula, and the Persian Gulf. Anglo-Afghan, Anglo-Persian, and Anglo-Turkish relations, however, were not as smooth as London policymakers had expected. Where we at? Right here. Even war was feared when Turkey threatened British troops in 1922. Deprived of the support of the British press, the Conservatives and the Dominions, the Prime Minister was compelled to resign. War, however, was avoided. London policymaking in the Middle East in the early 20th century reflected historically significant changes in the waging of war and making of peace. Like the other great powers, Britain was increasingly affected by scientific and technological change. While the role of the state in developing and deploying atomic power since World War II is well known, the significance of the military industrial complex and its expectations of official support at a much earlier period is interestingly revealed in Maurice Pureton's The Knowledgeable State, Diplomacy, War, and Technology Since 1830. The object of weapon and the other manufacturers was to convince government that the interests of the nation and finance were identical. So that shows you what's really going on. But that's all we're going to read on that. We're going to move forward. So we're going to look at this Sykes-Picot Agreement. And this is going to blow you away. So the Sykes-Picot Agreement, officially known as the Asia Minor Agreement, was a secret 1916 agreement between the United Kingdom and France, which is what they were talking about in the previous article, to which the Russian Empire assented. The agreement defined their mutually agreed spheres of influence and control in southwestern Asia. The agreement was based on the premise that the Triple Entente would succeed in defeating the Ottoman Empire during World War I. The negotiations leading to the agreement occurred between November 1915 and March 1916, and it was signed the 16th of May 1916. The deal, exposed to the public and on November 23, 1917, and in the British Guardian on November 26, 1917, is still mentioned when considering the region and its present-day conflicts. So this war that you're seeing going on right now in the so-called Middle East is really a result of this. Remember, I say this all the time, more so recently, that the future that you're dealing with is a result of past decisions. The future that we are dealing with is a result of past decisions. The future is the past coming to pass. The future is the past coming to pass. So the present day conflicts is based really off of this, and going back even further than that. This is just a physical manifestation of what was already written and going on in the spiritual. Now, the agreement allocated to Britain control of areas roughly comprising the coastal strip between the Mediterranean Sea and the River Jordan, southern Iraq, and an additional small area that included the ports of Haifa and Acre to allow access to the Mediterranean. Had everything to do with getting possession of these ports and everything, so they can get more money and stuff with trade and controlling these different things. They were strategic points. France got control of southeastern Turkey, northern Iraq, Syria, and Lebanon. Russia was to get Istanbul, the Turkish Straits, and Armenia. Now, listen to this right here. The controlling powers were left free to determine state boundaries within their areas. Further negotiation was expected to determine international administration in the Brown area, an area including Jerusalem, similar to and smaller than Mandate Palestine, the form of which was to be decided upon after consultation with Russia, and subsequently in consultation with the other allies and the representatives of Hussein bin Ali, Sharif of Mecca. So they had this brown area, which included Jerusalem, which means it included Israel, that they said, hey, we're going to wait to negotiate about that later to determine international administration. Meaning that it was going to be, they wanted to decide internationally what they were going to do with it. Why is that? Why is that? Let's push forward. Now you see all these nations coming together, right? Now let's go to Psalms chapter 83. And we're going to see it says, keep not thou silence, O God. Hold not thy peace, and be not still, O God. For lo, thine enemies make a tumult, and they that hate thee have lifted up the head. They have taken crafty counsel against thy people, and consulted against thy hidden ones. They have said, come, and let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel may be no more in remembrance. For they have consulted together with one consent. They are confederate against thee. So coming against Israel is coming against God. And I'm not talking about the folks that are over there. That's a state. God ain't dealing with, God is not coming back to set up no state. Not coming to set up no democracy. This ain't no democracy. So the nations, all the nations came together, and they wanted to cut off Israel from being a nation, that the name of Israel may be no more in remembrance. Now, that means that we should be able to trace the people that claim to be the people back there sometime in history, but for some reason we can't. We can trace them to other places, but we can't trace them back to specifically coming from that particular point, Israel. or in that area. For one, they would not have survived because it was too hot, and they would have gotten cancer and died off, like what's happening today. If I'm not mistaken, it's like the second. We're gonna go. It's a top 5 cancer rate in the world. Why? Because they're not supposed to be in that sun like that. The tabernacles. So these are all the people, not all of them, but the majority of them. Lots of these are Arabian or Arab nations, because Arabs come from right here, mostly Ishmael, but Ishmael he mingled his seed with Edom, so you have mixes in here too, which falls into the category of Arabs. The tabernacles of Edom and the Ishmaelites of Moab, and the Hagarenes, Gebal, Ammon, and Amalek, so even the giants. The giants are coming against Israel, because Amalek, Anu, the Anunnaki, Ammon, these are giants right here. So they all came together to cut Israel off from being a nation. Everything to do with coming against God. All this right here is just a physical manifestation of it. The Philistines with the inhabitants of Tyre, Ashur also is joined with them. They have Hopen, the children of Lot, Selah. Then he goes in and talks about, hey, take care of business, Lord, because they're doing this. So we want to look at this mandatory Palestine document. The mandatory Palestine indicates Eretz Israel, or land of Israel, was a geopolitical entity established between 1920 and 1923 in the region of Palestine as part of the partition of the Ottoman Empire under the terms of the British Mandate for Palestine. Then we go with the British again, right? During the First World War, an Arab uprising, and the British Empire's Egyptian Expeditionary Force under General Edmund Allenby drove the Turks out of the Levant during the Sinai and Palestine campaign. Remember, we read about the Turks. The United Kingdom had agreed in the McMahon Hussein correspondence that it would honor Arab independence if they revolted against the Ottomans, but the two sides had different interpretations of this agreement. And in the end, the UK and France divided up the area under the Sykes-Picot Agreement, an act of betrayal in the eyes of the Arabs. That's why they're mad today, because under these agreements they agreed to give them their own state. That's what the Palestinians are fighting about. So in reference to that, they have a legal right to be mad. Now, it's not their land either, but they definitely can claim the land more than the people who are over there claiming that it's their land. Because the Arabs, they are descended directly from Abraham. Remember, Abraham slept with Hagar. So yeah, they had this agreement. They had all these different agreements, and they were not honoring them the way they were supposed to. And then the Arabs, they got mad because the British promised them independence. Why? If they revolted against the Ottomans, if you help us fight the Ottomans, we're gonna give you your own piece of land right here, right where you're right where you're fighting at. But the two sides had different interpretations of this agreement. And in the end, the UK and France divided up the area under the Sykes-Picot Agreement. We just read that. An act of betrayal in the eyes of the Arabs. This is still going on today. Based off of this whole thing right here. The mandatory Palestine and the Sykes-Picot Agreement and this McMahon Hussein correspondence. Now we go here, it talks about the Balfour Project, and it talks about how it correlates to the Sykes-Picot Agreement of 1916. With the Ottoman Empire drawn into the war, the Entente powers assumed that its defeat and dismemberment were inevitable. They negotiated between themselves which portions of the empire they would take. In 1915, Prime Minister Herbert Asquith appointed to the Debouchin Committee to identify the Ottoman territories that were of interest to Britain. They considered the port of Haifa in Palestine to be a useful transport link to Mesopotamia, but they did not see any value in the rest of Palestine. Remember, the Bible also references Israel as Palestina. It had nothing to do with what you've been taught. Again, another witness. It was all about trade, making money, power. The British saw the French as their main rivals for Ottoman territory in the Middle East. With the Debouchin recommendations in mind, British diplomat Sir Mark Sykes met with French representative Francis Georges Picot and Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Zananow to negotiate a Russian-British-French agreement on the division of these territories. So it was like, man, I don't really want to go to war with them. We're rivals, so maybe we can work out a deal that will benefit all of us. Because we're not really in a position to be going to war like this. But if we get some allies and they help, and that gives us some backing that will help us, then we'll get what we want, and then they'll get what they want, and then we'll make our moves later. So they came to this agreement. It was a Russian, a British, and a French agreement on how they were going to divide it up. Now, how they going to divide up something that they didn't even own, and then going to give it to somebody else that they didn't own it in the first place either. Commonly known as the Sykes-Picot Agreement in 1916, allocated territory and zones of influence to Britain, France, Russia, and Italy. Palestine was allocated a special international administration. At this time, all the territory was still under the Ottoman rule. Palestine was allocated a special international administration. Remember we read that earlier, right? We're going to keep this aside, that brown area. Now we go make the connection with the Balfour Declaration. Now, I found this very, very interesting because this is from Britannica. Balfour Declaration, November 2nd, 1917. Statement of British support for the establishment in Palestine, Israel, of a national home for the Jewish people. It was made in a letter from Arthur James Balfour, the British Foreign Secretary to Lionel Walter Rothschild, 2nd Baron Rothschild of Tring, a leader of British Jewry. So they was all in bed together. He knew what was up, but they were really playing them. Because they wanted to get in position to get this piece of land. Though the precise meaning of the correspondence has been disputed, its statements were generally contradictory to both the Sykes-Picot Agreement, a secretive convention between Britain and France, and the Hussein-McMahon correspondence, an exchange of letters between the British High Commissioner in Egypt, Sir Henry McMahon, and Hussein ibn Ali, then Emir of Mecca, which in turn contradicted one another. So all these documents they each contradicted what one another said, but they had made these different agreements with each other. Crazy. The Balfour Declaration, issued through the continued efforts of Chaim Wiseman, I addressed him before in some videos, and Nahum Zakalo, who Zionist leaders in London fell short of the expectations of the Zionists who had asked for the reconstitution of Palestine as a Jewish national home. They didn't want anything to do with the Arabs, because this is what the Declaration really says. The Declaration specifically stipulated that nothing shall be done which may prejudice the civil and religious rights of existing non-Jewish communities in Palestine. The document, however, said nothing of the political or national rights of these communities and did not refer to them by name. Nevertheless, the Declaration aroused enthusiastic hopes among Zionists and seen the fulfillment of the aims of the World Zionist Organization. The British government hoped that the Declaration would rally Jewish opinion, especially in the United States, to the side of the Allied powers against the Central Powers during World War I. This is what it had everything to do with. They were jockeying for power. Well, if we give them this, then we can get the United States to come into the war to help us. Not realizing that the Jews were over here in America pulling strings with the American government themselves, backing them. And of course, you know what I'm talking about, Jews, I'm talking about the fake Jews. Y'all really know why the wars started? The World War I and World War II was leading up to get this piece of land. It's not for what you think. Now, of course, you know there are other things in there, but that was the main thing. World War I, World War II, the Holocaust, then the Holocaust sympathy and stuff like that, to ultimately, oh, we need our land. We need to get our people to the land. When they weren't even really studying it like that. And then when you study history even more, you see that before they decided on Israel, they were looking at other places. They looked at Australia. It was another place. It was several places, but it was one place that they got it. They said, we're going to go here. Now, if you are the people, then why in the world would you be looking at any other place? You're going to say, no, we're not going here. We are going back to where our God has told us that we're going to go. But that's not the case. They were looking at other pieces and they almost got them. They almost decided on those places. Go look it up. If I come across it again, which I know I will, I'll make a video and I'll share it with y'all. But I know I have it in another video somewhere. The Balfour Declaration was endorsed by the principal Allied powers and was included in the British Mandate over Palestine, formally approved by the newly created League of Nations on July 24, 1922. In May 1939, the British government altered its policy in a white paper recommending a limit of 75,000 further immigrants and an end to immigration by 1944 unless the resident Palestine Arabs of the region consented to further immigration. And it goes on talking more about the this Balfour Declaration. So we're going to read a little bit more about it. It said the Balfour Declaration was a public statement issued by the British government during World War I, announcing support for the establishment of a national home for the Jewish people in Palestine, then an Ottoman region with a minority Jewish population, around 3 to 5% of the total. So it says, it reads, His Majesty's government view with favor the establishment in Palestine of a national home for the Jewish people, and will use their best endeavors to facilitate the achievement of this object, it being clearly understood that nothing shall be done which may prejudice the civil and religious rights of existing non-Jewish communities in Palestine, or the rights and political status enjoyed by the Jews in any other country. So, You see what's going on. They said they were going to do anything they could to get this done. And they did when they had already made an agreement, and then they pretty much reneged on that agreement, and then, you know, did another agreement, a whole bunch of different agreements for one piece of land. They made agreements with the Arabs. They made agreements with the Russians. They made agreements with France. They made agreements with the Rothschilds. The declaration was contained in a letter dated the 2nd of November 1917 from the United Kingdom's Foreign Secretary Arthur Balfour to Lord Rothschild. Now, why would the letter go to him? Because he was a leader of the British Jewish community. Lord Rothschild, a leader of the British Jewish community, huh? But these are God's people. For transmission to the what? The Zionist Federation of Great Britain and Ireland. Now, Lionel Walter Rothschild, the second Baron Rothschild, was a British banker, politician, zoologist, and scion of the Rothschild family. As a prominent Zionist leader. So nobody can't tell me I'm making this stuff up. Oh man, you're making it up. It's telling you right here. And you can check multiple sources. As a prominent Zionist leader, he was presented with the famous Balfour Declaration, which pledged to a Jewish national home in Palestine or Israel. Like, come on. You're telling me that the Brits wrote a letter to this man who, he was just a man that had money. Plenty of money, but he wasn't in essence in position that they were like the British government was, but he pretty much in essence he was more powerful than the British government. Oh yeah, and he was a Zionist. And the government of Britain wrote him a letter saying, we got you. We got you. We got you. Don't you worry. Zionism in the Balfour Declaration. We ain't going to read that. We're going to keep on pushing forward. So, this is another article. I'm keep on telling y'all, you got to read. You got to read. You're not going to know nothing if you don't read and understand, especially in reference to the Bible. Lord Balfour reflects on ancestors' divisive legacy. So this is a descendant of Arthur Balfour. Roger Francis Arthur Balfour, the 5th Lord Balfour, poses for a photo in his flat in London on October 28, 2017. A century after his ancestor wrote a letter that became a what? Foundation stone for the state of Israel. No such thing as a state of Israel in the Bible. Lord Balfour condemns the complete imbalance in its application from the Palestinians' point of view. So even the dude who's ancestor of the dude who gave it to the Rothschilds, he said that, hey, this ain't right. Because they did agree to give the Palestinians a state. Multiple agreements agreed to give them a state. But we know that's not going to happen until the Antichrist steps on the scene and brings his false peace. He just, you know what I'm saying, brings all of them together. Which we see that going on. You got different factions, America and different countries trying to come together, bring them all together, and then, you know what I'm saying, come to agreement. And then it always falls through. Somebody's always trying to broker a deal. It's not going to happen until the Antichrist does it. Now, what happens before that? Hey, let's be ready. A century after his ancestor wrote a letter that became a foundation stone for the state of Israel, Lord Balfour condemns the complete imbalance in its application from the Palestinians' point of view. Roderick Balfour spoke glowingly of Israel's achievements in an interview with AFP, but said the Balfour Declaration's promise to protect non-Jewish communities remain unfulfilled to this day. I'm sure author would say this is unacceptable, that there's got to be more help for the Palestinians, the banker said in reference to his great-great-uncle, Arthur Balfour's 1917 missive. So he goes on and talks about that. You can read the whole thing you want to. We're just going to read some key points. The Balfour Declaration was a 67-word letter from Britain's then Foreign Secretary to Lionel Rothschild, a prominent British Zionist, supporting the creation of a Jewish homeland in Palestine. The document eventually led to the creation of Israel in 1948, the displacement of millions of Palestinians in decades of strife between the two communities. So those people keep on saying that, oh, Israel became a nation in 1948, 1947, 1948, fulfilling the Bible prophecy. They're liars. They're straight up lying to you. And I know they're lying because these dudes, they do their research. The Dillingers, the Breakers, the Dr. Gene Kims, the Pastor the Charles Lawsons, all these people that God bless Israel, we stand with Israel, doing all this research, but you're telling me that they can't see the same thing that I'm reading right here, we're reading on the screen, and make the connections. And it's not an issue of just this, but when you take all of this that we have been reading and you apply it to the word of God, it does not line up in regard to Bible prophecy in Israel becoming a nation. It does not. Let's keep on pushing forward. So, you have the Parliamentary Papers, 1815 to 1906, Volume 12. And it talks about Lionel Nathan Rothschild and his faith. So, I'm going to paraphrase this, but he was appointed to the House of Parliament, if I'm not mistaken. And he would not, it says, whereupon Baron Lionel Nathan D. Rothschild, Alderman David Solomon, and Baron Meyer Amschel D. Rothschild, being members professing the Jewish religion, which is to them the Jewish, it's not Jew religion, it's Judaism, and Judaism is not taught in the Bible. The Jewish religion has everything to do with the Kabbalah, the Talmud, the Zohar religion, and stuff like that. Satanism has everything to do with that, nothing to do with the Torah. Having come to the table, were sworn upon the Old Testament and took the oath, omitting the words, and I make this declaration upon the faith, and I make this declaration upon the true faith of a Christian, and subscribe the same. So what happened was he would not put his hand on a Bible that had the Old and New Testament, because that was required when they were sworn in. And he won many times, and every time it came to it when he had to do this, he would not do it. And so he had one of his partners, they got into a position, and then they made up a law pretty much that enabled him to be sworn in and do it on the Old Testament and not the New Testament, and not on the faith of a Christian. Antichrist. And then the crazy thing about that is, some people may be saying, oh, he did it on the Old Testament. Us, the Jews, they're lost, they're blinded. So of course he would do that. Well, the Old Testament prophesies about Jesus. That's what the Old Testament is about the coming Messiah. All the way going back to Genesis has everything to do with the coming Messiah. Going all the way back to the garden, going way back before that. So that's one problem. The second thing, which is really the first thing, is just because they had their hand on the Old Testament doesn't mean nothing, because they themselves didn't even believe in the Old Testament. It was all a sham. They don't believe in the Old Testament. And you can go look that up. The Zionists. Go look and see what Zionists believe in, holding to the traditions of the elders. Let's keep on pushing forward. The Rothschild family. The Rothschild family is a wealthy Jewish family descending from Meyer Amschel Rothschild, a court factor to the German something something in the free city of Frankfurt, Holy Roman Empire, who established its banking business in the 1760s. Unlike most previous court factors, Rothschild managed to bequeath his wealth and established an international banking family through his 5 sons, who established themselves in London, Paris, Frankfurt, Vienna, and Naples. The family was elevated to noble rank in the Holy Roman Empire and the United Kingdom. During the 19th century, the Rothschild family possessed the largest private fortune in the world, as well as the largest private fortune in modern world history. So you're telling me that these people can do wickedly and still be blessed to be the richest, probably the richest family in the world, and you're telling me that these are God's people. God gave them all this money, yet they are so wicked, especially with the banking business and the way that banks are straight crooks. Yeah, we got to use them. Majority of us do, some of us don't. But if you study banking and the banking laws and everything, and you know how crooked banks are. I wonder why, because it's their family that set it up. Where did they get this knowledge of understanding banking and to set up these different central banks? Where did they get that knowledge? The same family who said, I'm paraphrasing, give me control of the money, I don't care who make the laws. You're telling me that these are Israelites, physical Israelites of the Bible. That's what you're telling me. The Bible says that Moses was rich, but Moses was obedient, and I'm pretty sure Abraham. With Moses was also, we know Moses was pretty well off too, because look where he grew up at. But I'm more specifically talking about Abraham. Abraham was rich. I'm pretty sure if Abraham got out of control, then God would have took some of that wealth that he had. So you're telling me again that the Rothschild family, the basis of the Balfour Declaration, pretty much, that led up to the foundation of the state of Israel, that's God's people. These extremely wealthy, rich people who want nothing to do with the Lord Jesus Christ. That's what you're telling me. Okay. If you want to keep on believing that, then you can. Let's go right here. Jewish identity and positions on Zionism. Jewish solidarity in the family was not homogeneous. Many Rothschilds were supporters of Zionism, while other members of the family opposed the creation of the Jewish state. So even in their family, some were with it, some were against it. But we know who prevailed, the ones that were in position to make those decisions, the sons. In 1917, Walter Rothschild, second Baron Rothschild, was the addressee of the Balfour Declaration to the Zionist Federation. I mean, how much more evidence do I have to give you? Which committed the British government to the establishment in Palestine of a national home for the Jewish people. His son, Victor Lord Rothschild, was against granting asylum or helping Jewish refugees in 1938. For whatever reason, we got to go study that out. I'm pretty sure he had his reason, and it wasn't for what you think. Oh, this God, people, he was trying to fulfill Bible prophecy. Stop it. Stop it. So we see in the reason that the British government was so much backing and willing to do this was because that the Rothschild family is the one who gave them the money. The Rothschild family was the one who was funding all these different groups for these wars to lead up to getting this document and getting the land. So after the death of James Jacob D. Rothschild in 1868, his eldest son, Alphonse Rothschild, took over the management of the family bank and was the most active in support of Eretz Israel. The Rothschild family archives show that during the 1870s, the family contributed nearly 500,000 francs per year on behalf of Eastern Jewry to the Alliance Israelite Universal. Baron Edmund James D. Rothschild, youngest son of James Jacob D. Rothschild, was a patron of the first settlement in Palestine at Rishon LeZion, and brought from Ottoman landlords parts of the land which now make up present-day Israel. So we know who owns the land. This wicked family. In 1924, he established the Palestine Jewish Colonization Association. Interesting that he used that word, which acquired more than 125,000 acres of land and set up business ventures. So it goes down, it talks about people giving buildings. Well, I want to go right here. James A. D. Rothschild financed the Knesset building as a gift to the state of Israel, and the Supreme Court of Israel building was donated to Israel by Dorothy D. Rothschild. Now, if you go look at these buildings, you will see all type of satanic occultic symbolism all through it. I wonder why. Outside the president's chamber is displayed the letter Ms. Rothschild wrote to the then current Prime Minister Shimon Peres expressing her intention to donate a new building for the Supreme Court. Shimon Peres, Zionist. Now, if we go look at Mount Sinai, or this map, I want you to see something more so about Jericho. Jericho is up here, as you see. You got the Sinai Peninsula up in here. You got Mount Sinai up in here. Egypt, they crossed over like that for the Exodus. Boom, 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 boom. Canaan is also known as the land, what we call today the land of Israel. So they were familiar with this land, just like they were familiar with Egypt. They were familiar with this land. Why? Because it was a part of Africa. And you know about Jericho. If you see on this map, you see Jericho's up in there. Remember the stories of Jericho. They go Egypt right there. Boom, boom, boom. I'm showing you that it's a part of it. Now, the Bible talks about Kadesh. So let's go read a few scriptures about Kadesh. Now Moses kept the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian, And he led the flock to the backside of the desert and came to the mountain of God, even to Horeb. Behold, I will stand before thee there upon the rock in Horeb, and thou shalt smite the rock, and there shall come water out of it, that the people may drink. And Moses did so in the sight of the elders of Israel. You can go look all the stuff up. The rock is still there. And right here in Deuteronomy 1:2, I want you to keep this in mind. There are 11 days' journey from Horeb by the way of Mount Seir unto Kadesh Barnea. Keep that in mind. Kadesh Barnea. It's 11 days' journey, right? So if you look right here, and you come up here, they travel all through there. So they were familiar with this, and they was familiar with this. Now, Mount Sinai, Kadesh, is pretty much this. To Jordan, which would be Horeb, by the way of Mount Seir unto Kadesh. This is this right here. Kadesh would be pretty much Jordan, Petra. So what is the distance? Mount Sinai, Egypt to Jordan. You can take the taxi, you can fly, which is about 4 hours and 36 minutes, or you can take a taxi or the bus, which is cheaper. It takes 17 hours. Now God said walking, it was going to take them 11 days. And you see it's all a part. It's all a part of it. Now, if we go look at the land of Canaan in regards to the Bible, it tells us where we at? Genesis 11:31, and Terah took Abram, his son, and Lot the son of Haran, his son's son, and Sarai, his daughter-in-law, his son Abraham's wife, and they went forth with them from Ur of the Chaldees to go into the land of Canaan. And they came unto Haran and dwelt there. In Genesis 12:5 it says, and Abram took Sarai his wife, and Lot his brother's son, and all their substance that they had gathered, and the souls that they had gotten in Haran. And they went forth to go into the land of Canaan, and into the land of Canaan they came. So let's go look at this on the map. Right here, land of Canaan at time of Joshua, what we call Israel. They had all this. Where did Canaan come from? Canaan came from what we call Africa. Why? Because all this is a part of Africa. This is Abraham's journey from Ur to Haran to Egypt. So he started down here, which is I think this is modern day Egypt today. Went on up Haran, we read about that. Came on down, boom, 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 boom. They were familiar with all these places. They were familiar with this. They were familiar with that. All this was connected. All that was considered a part of Africa. It's a bigger picture of it. Give y'all a second to look at that. It's a bigger picture of the map we were just looking at. So I think that pretty much says it all. You got any questions, you can email me. God bless each and every one of you in Jesus Christ's name. As always, stay focused for Jesus. And as you know, truth is not debated, it is declared. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video. If it was edifying to you, be sure to do your part and share it on all your social media outlets, websites, and forums. Your help is greatly appreciated to help fight this war and reach lost souls. Don't forget to like, dislike, and/or subscribe. Be sure to also check out our website, stayingfocusedforjesus.life. And make sure you check out that resource section, which has a lot of videos that I share and some other stuff, books, documents, PDF, websites, many things, and it's growing daily as I add to it. Also follow us on Facebook for even more content. Staying Focused for Jesus on Facebook.
Squeeze it so tight, get the last drop, till there's nothing left, until we pass out. Keeping us around to clean up the mess and take the garbage out, but we'll be trash next. Create catastrophes to speed up the process. Depopulation, agenda, progress. News tell half-truths, hidden in plain sight. They know with it Kool-Aid, but gave us cyanide. They know we don't see it. They know you can't see it. What they've done to us. Open your eyes. Lemonade. Don't drink the Kool-Aid. It ain't safe for us. They made it so sweetly, so it will be easy to carry their plans out to lemonade. Oh, lemonade. Don't drink the Kool-Aid. It ain't safe for us. Made it too easy while we're busy sleeping. They carry their plans out to lemonade. Voluntarily, they hold us hostage, pay to receive fabricated knowledge, false education, standing ovation for my degree in indoctrination. Georgia Guidestones plainly tell us that they plan to eliminate us. Conspiracy theory, we see no dilemma as they quietly wipe out billions. They know we don't see it. They know you can't see it. They know what they done to us, taking us down. Lemonade. Don't drink the Kool-Aid. It ain't safe for us. They made it so sweetly, so it will be easy to carry their plans out to lemonade. Oh, lemonade. Don't drink the Kool-Aid. It ain't safe for us. Made it too easy while we're busy sleeping. They carry their plans out to lemonade. Oh, invisible ones behind the scenes, like Geppetto, pulling the strings. Master plan, dumb us all down. Eat what they feed us, try not to think. Carry on, nothing to see as they continue with their killing spree. We wasting time on trivial things and buy what they sell. Even